Fox News national security strategist Sebastian Gorka, conservative commentator Monica Crowley, trial attorney Rebecca Rose Woodland. Where do we start, Rebecca?
Well, I mean, there are so many people. Every day there are more. With Charlie Rose, at least he was fired today. At least he admitted he did these things. So these victims are not further victimized by the press and people who just keep insisting that all these women are lying. There can't be this many women lying. It can't be a whole group of people throughout the course of America who are lying. It's not possible. It doesn't make sense.
We are in this moment now, Sean, because for decades, this kind of horrid behavior has been covered up, excused, and accepted. And so now with the Harvey Weinstein piece in the New York Times opened the floodgate. And that's why you have now this explosion of stories. People feel empowered to come out and tell their stories. But here's the interesting thing. This kind of horrid behavior, if you look at politics, for example, goes back to JFK, Ted Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson. But in the modern era...
Ted Kennedy, who left the lion of the Senate that left a woman in the bottom of a body of water. He went home, told nobody. There was a house across the street, and he was so beloved.
Lionized. But in the modern era, a lot of people are putting the current marker at Bill Clinton and his behavior because he was excused by the woman who was the most powerful and influential in the country, not just in his life, but Mrs. Clinton. So there's a special place in hell, Sean, for the women who have covered for this kind of behavior.
Listen to what I said about John Conyers. I never liked the thing that John Conyers ever said. Politically, we're on opposite sides. John Conyers says no. Others say it didn't happen. I believe Clarence Thomas was smeared at the last minute. You see October surprise after October surprise, whether it's a DUI for George Bush or an allegation in a campaign 30 days out of an election. Sometimes it's not true. What do we do? How should people act when one side says it happened, and without smearing them like the Clintons did for 30 years, and take their allegations seriously, especially in the case of, well, is it pedophilia? We need to find out. We need to know. We need in every case to know the truth. But how do you balance that? And then I'll get to Sebastian in a minute.
Well, this is the issue now. With Conyers, we're bringing up a huge issue in Congress.
Am I right to give him the presumption of innocence?
No, absolutely not. That's
I'm wrong to do that?
No, you're absolutely right. I'm sorry. You're absolutely right to do it as you've done it over the last week. I think you should. That's
I've done it my whole career, Rebecca.
Well, I'm saying with all these victims, we've discussed this over and over. I mean, that's what the Constitution provides. Absolutely. The problem with Congress is there's not a body that is investigating carefully, distinctively, and without some sort of... There's a whole shadow over this Office of Compliance that women have to go to. It's not only women, men as well, have to go to if they were harassed. And this Office of Compliance is shrouded in secrecy. So there might be a way with all of these complaints now to restructure that and have a better place for people to go.
If we're going to have a coming to Jesus moment, I think in the end, as a father, I have 3 sisters, Dr. Gorka. Just the people that admitted these things and groping Franken with what he did to poor Leanne Tweeden is enough. You know, but it was conservatives that were out there on the front line saying, wow, all of these women, and there was more besides Juanita and Kathleen and Paula and Monica. There were a lot of other women involved in this, too, that I interviewed over the years. How do you balance that, and how much damage do liberals do in terms of they want the mantle that they are the great protectors of women's rights, but yet they were involved in protecting the Clintons all those decades?
Now, that's the real question. So you've been very, very righteous in terms of giving the question of the reasonable doubt, the idea that you have to prove the case, the presumption of innocence, whether it's Judge Moore, whether it's John Conyers. But let's step back and let's talk about that bigger issue. The left as a whole has no vision and no morals. They are spiritually and politically bankrupt, Sean. Why? Because they made this all possible. Whether it was covering for Ted Kennedy, whether it was covering for Bill Clinton, they've created this mantra for 30 years. It's just sex. It's okay. It's private. Don't worry about it. This created a culture of permissiveness. As a result, the political side of the aisle that says we are for women, we support the victims, they have completely hollowed out their own moral standing. And I want to see a reckoning right now. I want to see the real feminists get out on the street. I don't care what kind of hat they're wearing, but I want them to protest because, hey, we're the right. They hate us. I get it. But they made this possible on their own side. Let's talk about Charlie Rose. Charlie Rose?
Let me ask Monica this question. You know, what convinced me is right from the get-go with the Clintons, Jennifer Flowers had tapes. They actually said, dude, you doctored the tapes. I don't know if you could hear it was his voice. You can hear an intimate conversation that was going on there. But they still went out, denied it. Years later, he had to admit it.
Yeah,
and they go on saying,
just to be clear, that was a consensual relationship, though, Sean, with Jennifer Flowers.
That's different, very different.
Issue.
Agreed. But he still lied.
Yes.
Okay, and that was part of it. And she was smeared, and she was telling the truth. That's the difference. You know, in the case of how much will science now play a role? One of the things I thought in the Roy Moore case, for example, is I talked to a 42-year expert in handwriting analysis, said you give him, he's done this 42 years. It's an art. It's a science. And he's going to be able to tell you forensically if the ink is new or old, and forensically if he can look at his handwriting at the time with that yearbook, there's their answer.
Right. And these investigations should go on because nobody should be smeared in this way if the charges are false. Problem is here, time is of the essence, right? There's another point about hypocrisy that I want to make, Sean. Over these last couple of decades, every Republican that's been embroiled in some sort of sex scandal, the left has piled on because they used to say that conservative ran as a family values candidate or a family values
So if you have
Republican,
no standards,
so they're
you're
a
better
hypocrite.
off.
But the left is equally as hypocritical in this sense, where they position themselves as big champions of women. And yet in their private lives, what's coming to light now is that their behavior against women has been absolutely atrocious.
Closing remarks, Dr. Gorka, we'll go to you first.
I think this is just the tip of the iceberg, Sean. I think we have to, strap on our seatbelts and hold tight because I think this is the beginning of an avalanche. And I hope it means that the left will have to clean house. No more double standards. No more playing the victim card. And let's have.
They protected him through 2016. The only reason that they're doing it now is because they don't need the Clintons anymore.
Correct.
Clintons can't do anything for him anymore. All right. Sorry, Rebecca, last word.
I think I agree with Dr. Gorka. This is the beginning of an avalanche, and I think it's a great opportunity for us to change values in this country and to change the way we treat victims and how we handle.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And we have to be careful, though. This is dangerous territory.
And just a word of warning, this kind of behavior has no political or partisan boundaries.
Oh, you're going to, oh, yeah.
So while, a lot of these perpetrators and predators are on the left, look, it could be a big conservative tomorrow. So let's just
Should
make
Franken
sure
have
that
to
we
resign or let the people of Minnesota decide?
Well, the people of Minnesota should decide, as the people of Alabama should decide on
Who should decide in Franken's case with the picture? You have evidence?
I think Al Franken should resign himself.
You do, Dr. Gorka?
He should take himself out, yeah.
Oh, absolutely, without a question of a doubt. The proof's there. He's admitted it. It's not hearsay. We have the proof.
All right. Thank you all for being with us.